right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started, please. Welcome to Public Works Building. It's July the 11th at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to go through a workshop this morning. The first thing we need to do is take roll.
Mayor Wolf.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Hamilton.
Here.
Mr. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Linderman.
Here.
Okay, the budget workshop. Obviously, we're going to go through a PowerPoint that there's copies of, I think, up on the desk up here if you need one, and it'll be up on the screen. Our plan is to go through the PowerPoint budget completely today. Get whatever questions come out of that, track them, and then take next week for the council to have their time with the city administrator individually and go through the actual budget itself, which we've already started, but continue to go through the line items by line item. And then come back on the 30th and go over this budget line by line. So that's our plan. Let's see how we get through it. If we get done with the PowerPoint quick, which I don't think is going to go real fast, then we might have some time to go into the line items. So with that said, Chris?
All right, Mayor, Council, citizens, I appreciate all the citizens that showed up today to listen to my budget presentation. Just going through it, Julie, if you want to go to the next slide, please. Anybody that knows me and knows how I am, I like to keep things kind of light and not too serious. And so I saw this. I saw this on social media, and I thought it would be a good way of breaking the ice here today. Kind of fitting for me. So I worked on this budget, completely. Everything you're going to see today on the PowerPoint and in the line item budget is what I've worked on. So anyway, we're just going to try to keep it light and not too serious. Julie? Put this warning in there because this is going to be probably a different type of budget presentation than what you're used to. I know it's a lot different than the budget presentations I gave when I was here from 2006 to 2014. In addition to touching on the budget, we're going to touch on various things that impact Mexico Beach, such as history, world events, national economic policy, and long-term planning. My goal is to get the citizens and the city council to start thinking and start thinking outside the box. I'm going to propose some things that are different and never been discussed before, not only here but in the state of Florida. Julie? Some of the things that I want people to think about as we're going through this budget presentation is our near-term needs and goals, future needs and goals. The fact that Hurricane Michael killed Old Mexico Beach. Everybody likes to talk about Old Mexico Beach, and I can tell you I've been here since the mid-90s. And whenever I was here in the mid-90s, it was a lot different when I got back in 2006, and it was a lot different when I left in 2014, and it was a lot different when I came back now. Like the old saying is, the only constant is change, and Mexico Beach is seeing that just like everywhere else. So we all loved Old Mexico Beach, but we have to start thinking outside that parameter. The growth, we're going to see growth. We've seen growth coming in. The St. Joe Company to our west, the Sugar Sands development to our west. We're going to see development up 386. We're also going to see growth, between us and Port St. Joe and even further up 386 outside our immediate service area. We have to decide whether or not we want to try to control that as much as possible and have it comply with Mexico Beach and what we see for our town compared to just letting development run wild. And lastly, a lot of us have to put aside our personal feelings about what, the way we want to see Mexico Beach personally and start thinking about, what's best for Mexico Beach as a whole. Julie? 3 additional things for the city council to consider. I wanted to put that on there because some of these we'll have to decide, during this budget process. And that's, are we going to fill the canal between Parker Park and Highway 98? If so, who's paying for it? And if we're willing to wait on the development of Sweetwater for them to do the work like they've said they would, do we stop all development in Parker Park for ourselves? and leave it as it sits right now. Secondly, Florida Statute 218.415 in creating a city investment plan and reserve policy. Hopefully, some of the citizens had an opportunity to look that up and read that and familiarize themselves with it. And then number 3 is how do we want to leave Mexico Beach for those that come after us? And I'm not talking about just us up here sitting at this table, I'm talking about future generations. We have to start thinking long-term and planning ahead, and again, not thinking necessarily about ourselves, but doing what's best for the city as a whole. Julie? Okay, what got us to where we are today and where are we going to go in the future? This is just a look at the budget process. Back one, Julie. I don't think you didn't upload the most current one. Skip down to slide 16.
16.
Slow.
Well, it's 16 on the presentation, I think. This slide.
20
It's 15.
Fiscal year 24-25 budget goals. Okay, here we go. Whenever I sat down and began working on the budget, obviously I had some goals and ideas in mind in getting this started. First thing was to cut taxes and provide some tax relief to our homesteaded properties. Mexico Beach is an expensive place to live. As we're all aware, inflation's been going up and money keeps getting tighter. So wanted to provide some sort of relief as much as possible while being able to accomplish the city's goals. Secondly, we want to provide better service and services to our property owners and visitors and provide increased safety. And when I talk about safety, I'm talking about fire, police, and our utility department. So we're providing that increased safety to our property owners and visitors here. Wanted to improve existing assets. That includes the boat ramp and build new facilities, an amphitheater and Parker Park for us to hold special events. Provide the tools and equipment needed by the city employees to complete their jobs. Obviously, we need the tools to provide the services to our citizens and property owners. Also thinking long term, I want to acquire property for future growth and economic development purposes here in the city and incorporate long-term planning goals and pathways into the budgeting process. Like I said, this isn't a budget presentation you're accustomed to seeing here in Mexico Beach in the past. This lays the foundation to incorporate and compensate for future growth beyond our existing borders. I know we don't like to talk about annexation, but if we're going to control the growth, that's the only way of doing it. That's a simple fact. And lastly, I want to provide a mechanism to dampen any kind of negative economic effects brought about by events outside our control. I don't think we can blame Mexico Beach for the inflation that the country is facing right now, and there's a lot of other things going on that is out of our control, and I want to try to diminish those effects as much as possible here for the city. Julie, if you can go back up now to the train wreck slide.
Yeah.
Okay. An overview of the current fiscal year. That's fiscal year 23 and 24 that we're currently in. As you can see better, in the bottom right-hand corner, again, trying to keep things light. Better known as fiscal year 24, train wreck barely avoided. We had 3 primary concerns here that affected the city, but then it could have affected us a lot worse. And if you attended or watched the city council meeting from 2 days ago, then you're aware that the state of Florida was withholding approximately $300,000 from us because of the fact we hadn't submitted our fiscal year 22 budget. I mean, not budget, but the audit. So that was completed with 2 days to spare. So again, narrowly avoided disaster there. $300,000 is a lot of money to me, and I would have hated to have lost that. So the three primary problems that we encountered this past year is we didn't have anyone in-house working on our financing. We didn't have an in-house accountant, didn't have an in-house finance director. Whenever that person left back last year in May, the city was really without anyone doing the finances until December when Carl Riggs and Ingram were hired. Made making financial decisions extremely difficult because there was no way of adequately knowing, where the money was at, if the money had been transferred, because we do a lot of transfers in the city budget between departments and into designated accounts. We didn't want to use any money that should have been gone into a designated account but was accidentally deposited and not designated in our system because we didn't have someone here doing the finances and doing that. So it just made the day-to-day operations here extremely difficult, not having somebody in-house to stay on top of that. And that was our number one issue this past year. And we are hiring. If you know anybody has municipal finance experience, send them our way. All right, the second issue was we hired Carl Riggs and Ingram, and I've got zero complaints about Carl Riggs and Ingram, so please don't take it that I'm criticizing them. Carl Riggs and Ingram have done a great job. They've been able to get us through that fiscal year 22 budget and work with our city auditors to make sure it was completed and submitted with 2 days to spare. They've worked diligently with city and city staff to get our finances back where they are. However, your typical accountant out there in an accounting firm, their job is vastly different compared to what we do in municipal accounting. So there's still things that, I have questions and concerns about. I still deal with them on transferring funds just because they're not accustomed to transferring funds into restricted accounts or other accounts that the city has set up and restricted those funds, in our behalf. It's nothing, statutorily that we're required to do, but it's funds that we've designated to be used for certain items, and they're just not accustomed to doing that on a day-to-day basis. So, but Carl Riggs and Ingram was great. Again, no complaints, and we're going to move forward into the 23rd or the fiscal year 23 audit as soon as possible. Julie? And then lastly, and I've mentioned this at a couple of meetings, there was several large dollar capital items and repairs that were budgeted in this year's budget, but those funds were budgeted out of impact fees. And so impact fees couldn't be used for those purchases or repairs. So there's still needed capital items and needed repairs to be made that we weren't able to do this year. And so by the time we get around to approving this budget, it will be a year since we identified and wanted to do this work or purchase these items. So again, that's been a hindrance on our day-to-day activities here at the city. Julie? All right, the fiscal year 24 highlight, and I think this is something that we, despite the negatives, we should all be proud of, is that with the concerns about the finances and not having someone in-house to stay on top of it on a day-to-day basis, we've really cut our spending. We've only purchased things that were necessary. We've made the repairs that were necessary. We've stayed on top of our budget probably a little more intensely than what has been done in years past. And due to that, we were able to save a lot of money this year, and it's improved the health of our general fund and our enterprise funds. So that's good news. All right, here's our current budget numbers by fund. And that's the current balances as of 7/6. You can see the date there. I ran that this past weekend when I was working on this slide. And you can see the revenues for the period, expenses for the period, and the year-to-date amount. The year-to-date amount is what in the civilian world, the business world, we call profit. So you can see it's very strong, very healthy year with us not spending much money at all. All right, Julie? The current bank balances, this is a printout of all the city's bank accounts. The bottom 4 accounts are our CDs that we have our funds in that earn a higher interest rate. I've told people in the past that I am about as fully transparent as you could hope me to be. I've got zero secrets. Anybody's welcome to come into City Hall at any time and get any information we have, for as long as it's not covered by the Privacy Act. This is our money, this is what we have, and this is what we are going to be looking at moving forward. Now, whenever you look at that, the pooled cash account, if you're not familiar with that, there's several pots of money inside that one pooled cash account, so while it's over $9 million, not all $9 million of that is available for the city to spend. Some of those funds are restricted and can only be spent on certain items, and we'll touch on those either later on today during this presentation or at the future meetings. All right, going through all that brings us to upcoming 24-25 fiscal year. Julie? All right, whenever you look at the Bay County tax assessor's information, we have a total value of $86,067,906. So Mexico Beach total property values exceeded $1 billion this year. That's kind of a benchmark in my mind. Of that, $41,624,367 is due to new construction. The total assessed value is $820,606,179, and the total taxable value is $759,630,084. I don't think, well, it is actually on the next slide. If you look at the next slide with the bar graphs, you can see last year's taxable value was $535,645,519. So that's a considerable increase there. And I don't think Mexico Beach is the only one seeing that, but that is our numbers directly from previous years and the Bay County tax property appraiser this year. Julie? All right, here Mexico Beach proposed millage rate. Our current rate this fiscal year is 5.9999. That brought in a current revenue of $3,672,242. This budget that I'm proposing today, and it could, obviously go up or down, but what I've proposed is 5.75 mils, and that would give us a proposed revenue of $4,149,479. Julie? And the next page is just a bar graph showing what those figures correspond to as far as revenue and the revenue of the past several years. Julie? So just some of the facts regarding our millage rate and our taxable values. The citywide taxable values increased 22%. The 5.75 mils that I'm proposing today decreases the millage rate by 4.17%, and homesteaded properties will see an effective tax cut of 4.01% from our current fiscal year. City ad valorem revenue will increase by 13%, even though taxable value increased by 22%. Okay, how did I come up with those numbers? This is simply mathematical equations that I use to calculate those. You can see on the left-hand side of that page how I calculated the decrease in mills and how that corresponds to the percentage decrease. And then if you look over on the right-hand side, that's a math equation showing what someone would pay in taxes if you're homesteaded, and you have and I kept the numbers easy because it's just easier to describe that way. But if you have a home or property here that's calculated and assessed at $100,000 in value, this year you would owe $599 at the 5.9999 millage rate. Being homesteaded, you only going to see a 3% increase. The taxes due if we leave the millage rate the same would be $617.99. But at the 5.75 mils, that drops down to $575. And then if you calculate the $575 that you will be paying under a if we didn't change the millage rate, it would be $617.99. So it'd be a 6.96 decrease if we didn't do anything. But since we're not proposing to, or we're proposing to cut the budget by 4% or the millage rate by 4%, then it comes up to a 4.01 effective decrease is what property owners will see if you're homesteaded and you match that mathematical equation there. All right, the budget highlights for the upcoming budget year. Got a pie chart there, Julie, next slide. Shows the revenues. Now, if you look at our monthly budget report, there's more line items than just these five as far as our revenue is concerned. I've lumped it all in together because if you start putting too many things in there, like what you'll see with the department expenditures, the areas get kind of small, and I just wanted to let everybody know and see that obviously ad valorem is our biggest source of revenue. And normally in previous years, it's even a larger percentage of the pie, but due to the fact I'm proposing to spend some of our reserves and grants and transfer some of the money out of designated funds to take care of some projects, then, ad valorem is smaller this year than previous years, but it is still the number one source of revenue for us. Julie? General fund department expenditures. Here you can see some of those small pieces of pie. It's hard to tell what's what. We do have the chart down or the legend on the bottom describing everything, but that breaks it down. All the expenditures in each department puts it in a pie chart format, so it's kind of simple to read and compare. Julie? Grants and transfers. This is some of the money that I just talked about. That's our second highest source of revenue this year. And you can see there what those are. Some of the grants we've talked about in the past. Some of the grants we've already received. Some of the grants we're going to be applying for this coming year, like the tree grant. And then some we get every year from the CDC. If you see over on the right-hand side of the page where it says funding, if you see prior year's surplus, that's basically money that we've saved from not spending funds in the past, and it's setting out a bank account being undesignated. Again, what most people refer to as our savings, just setting in a bank account. But you can see there, grants and transfers total $4.5 million nearly. General fund personnel costs. What we're proposing in this upcoming budget is hiring one new firefighter. That will make our fire department have 3 personnel per shift. That provides additional safety to our citizens. It also provides additional safety to the firefighters. If you're familiar with firefighting, if there's one of our shifts where we only have 2 firefighters on duty. If there was a structure fire here and someone was trapped inside that home, legally our firefighters are not allowed to enter that structure until a 3rd person shows up. So the person inside that structure, the worst could happen to them. So by having 3 on duty at all times, that eliminates that. Again, it allows us to provide better service and better safety to our citizens and our fire department. One new sheriff's deputy. This is kind of similar to the firefighters. Right now we've got one shift out here where there's only one deputy on duty at any given time. This hiring of a new deputy would put 2 deputies on shift at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that would allow us to provide better service, but it's also an officer safety issue. If there was a fight, some people jumped on the one deputy that was here, there's no backup for that person right now. So this would provide that additional person to respond and assist, an officer safety issue. Fire department pay adjustment. This is something that hasn't been discussed except there at City Hall. Our fire department was lowest paid in the area, and if you're not aware, we lost one firefighter over the past year since I've been here, who happened to be the lowest paid firefighter, and he joined the Marines. Now, if he joined the Marines out of a patriotic sense of duty, then more power to him. But I've got to wonder myself if we provided a more comparable pay scale here for our firefighters, if that would have happened. So the only way we're going to be able to recruit firefighters, because there's a lot of training, a lot of schoolwork that has to go through this, a lot of testing. So they're very highly qualified at what they do. And in order to get those qualified people to come to Mexico Beach, we're going to have to increase their pay, and that's what we did there. Health insurance, workers' comp went up, like every year. Employee cost of living increase being proposed at 2%. Employee incentive pay of 0 to 3%. Julie? Capital fund items. Security cameras. Those security cameras would be for City Hall and the area in between City Hall and the Public Works building covering the parking lot here. 2 zero-turn mowers, one for road streets, one for parks and recs. Windscreen for pickleball courts. 2 small trucks, again, one for road streets, one for park and rec. A boat ramp lean-to. That item hasn't been discussed before, but what that would do is it would provide a covered shelter down there for special events and other things that occur. If you've been down there during the Gumbo Festival or any of the fishing tournaments, a lot of the people, a lot of the bands that play, they're all out in the sun, and this time of year it's pretty brutal. So we're just proposing to build a lean-to down there, a pole barn type structure to provide a little added shade, and again for special events. When it's not being used by special events, we'll probably keep picnic tables and stuff there just for an extra pavilion here in the city where people want to go and eat lunch and watch the boats come in and out, and that they can do that there. A drive-on boat dock for the Bay County Sheriff's Office. Again, this is a safety issue, more so for our citizens and our visitors here. Right now, the Sheriff's Office isn't able to keep their boat in the canal. This drive-on boat dock would be down there next to the drive-on jet ski dock that we have for the fire department. It would allow the sheriff's office to keep their boat in the canal. That way, if someone was drowning, a boat was sinking, and they need to get to respond rapidly out into the Gulf, it would give them that ability. And you know, I would hate to think that, you know, people who are out in the Gulf and swimming or boating, that, you know, that should be one of our concerns, is to provide them as much safety as possible by doing what we can do. And side by side by the fire department, that, you know, is hoping to be purchased this coming year, but that should be mostly or all grant funded. The chief has been working on that. General fund projects, acquisition of property on 14th and 37th Street. We'll talk more about that later. If you've watched our meetings or been to our meetings, you've heard me talk about 37th Street and future development there. 14th Street is new, so again, I'll touch on that later. Boat ramp expansion and repairs. We received approximately $950,000 in grant funds for expanding the boat ramp. The city has around $800,000 in our own canal and boat ramp fund. And if you use the boat ramp, then you've probably seen that it needs to be repaired still from Hurricane Michael. And so we're going to do that all as one project and have everything taken care of down there as far as the repair work and the expansion all at one time. Under the Palms Park, that's already been approved, but money will be spent next year. Parker Park Amphitheater, again, something that I'm proposing. Highway 98, Toucan's restrooms, we're working on that with FEMA. And then updating the land development code, which some people here have talked about doing, and I've talked about doing it as well, just to modernize it and provide different options for the property to our north. Julie? General fund reserve accounts. Those top 3 funds currently exist. Those 3 funds I started when I was here, my first tour of duty. That's why the asterisk is next to those. The bottom 4 are new funds that I'm proposing to put into next year's budget. We were very lucky, and that's probably a bad way of saying it, but Hurricane Michael, with the damage it did and the damage it did to the dredge, FEMA agreed to replace our dredge. So we were lucky in that we didn't have to come out of pocket to purchase that new dredge that we just received. However, it's a very expensive item, and I don't think anybody hopes we get hit by another hurricane just so we can get a new dredge 15 years from now. So that'll start setting the money aside. We may not see the importance of it, but I promise you the city council and the city administrator that's here in 15 years will appreciate the fact we're doing this. Same way with the fire truck purchase fund. Anybody that looks at the price on a new fire truck, especially like a ladder truck that we just received, is well over $1 million. We probably won't see the benefits of that, but the people that come after us will. The garbage truck replacement fund, we have 3 garbage trucks right now on the road. The $100,000 a year will allow us to replace a truck every 3 years. So at the end of their lifespan of 9 years, each truck will be replaced during that time frame. Right now, we've got 1 truck that's in really bad shape and needs to be replaced, and this is just going to start setting aside the money to do that. The Tyndall sewer line relocation, you see the question mark there. Not sure if that's going to happen or not. I was unaware of that. We've not discussed it publicly because we're not sure it's going to happen yet. That was mentioned to myself and Mayor Wolf back when Mayor Wolf was just a lowly city councilman. We had a meeting with Bay County Utilities. Tyndall has floated the idea of having Mexico Beach remove its sewer line from Tyndall Air Force Base. If you're familiar with the layout of our sewer line between here and the AWT facility, it gets to the fence at Tyndall Air Force Base, goes underneath the fence, dumps into a lift station there, and then is pushed through the middle of base all the way to the AWT facility. They don't like that idea, and I guess, like I said, before I got here, the idea was floated. They may force us in 9 years to remove that sewer line, put it down Highway 98 to Sabre Drive, run it down Sabre Drive, and then take a ride out to the AWT facility. Don't know if it's going to happen, but it'd be nice to have a little bit of money set aside there just so we can, you know, pay our share and then plead poverty with the federal government if, you know, if they do want us to do it. If we don't do it, then that money will be setting aside for sewer projects in the future, that either repairs or expansion that we need to do here. So it's never a bad thing to save money if possible. Julie? Any questions over anything in the general fund or anything that I've mentioned or discussed here in this part of the slideshow presentation?
Chris, before you go forward, obviously we covered 31 pages of about 75, okay? So we got a little ways to go. We're going to go into more expenditures and revenues and some other areas as we get back into these. what I'd like to do is a workshop, so based on the 31 pages that we've covered, anybody make any notes or anything that they'd like to talk about? Any audience?
Well, there's a lot.
Okay, well, we gotta get started somewhere, so.
Yeah. We'll just start with,
If you could, there's a page at the bottom, it shows the page at the bottom, tell us what page you're talking about.
I'm thumbing through.
Okay.
Too many.
Anybody else, ready in the audience?
I'd just like to say it's good to see that we're starting to forward think about planning for big expenditures and budgeting and putting money back. I can go ahead and say, and I've said this to the mayor, and I think a lot of the council about Parker Park and Sweetwater. I think we forget about Sweetwater. They're not even in development order stage or any of that. We need to start planning and doing things for ourselves. So I applaud you for planning for the amphitheater and stuff to help people that live here all the time, so.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, along that line, I mean, I agree. It seems like there's several things that were touched upon. That being one of them, if they're gonna be doing a lot, how far do we go along, like building amphitheaters? As we talked about with Parker Park and playgrounds, and then have them come in and go through what we've already done. And then we have to go back and fix it, clean it up. So what's really the sequence that we want to do this? And several things like you were talking, and that applies to a lot of this. It's all good ideas, and I'm with him. We need to put together a long-term plan, long-term budget. So we can't get there if we have no clue of where we're going and how we're gonna do it. So I applaud this very massive effort. I really do. It's a lot of work. But like one of the things you mentioned, controlling the environment outside Mexico Beach. How do we do that? Well, the only way you can do it is if you take it over. So you have to attach it. How do we do that? What mechanisms is there in place, and then how do we proceed? That would impact on planning, zoning, what are they going to be doing? There's a lot here, and it's really, well, of course, the only way to take the journey is with the first step, and there we are. But the whole thing is the sequence of it, because we don't want to get caught up again, like as just a physical example, putting a lot of time, energy into Parker Park. We know this thing is coming, and they're going to be running construction equipment through, doing different easements in right of way. So how does Mexico Beach prioritize that, set up the sequence, so we're not going back over ourselves? And that's kind of just a general comment, really, which is obviously the point of this. I think we can't lose sight of the focus of sequencing, the sequence of our approach.
Good, but, yes, ma'am.
There are some good ideas so far, and throughout the rest of it, if you haven't gone over, there are some bad ideas throughout this presentation. But the thing that jumps out at me is something that I and so many other citizens have said over and over and over again. We do not have a citywide land and economic development plan in place. Just 48 hours ago, y'all sat up there and debated whether or not to go for a grant to put trees in the city, and you kept saying, well, we don't know if we should do this because we don't have a plan of where it's going. We do not have a comprehensive plan on development or economic development. And we have talked about it since the hurricane. Nothing has come of it. We had a grant that we were supposed to have produced this plan. That was fumbled completely. You cannot do some of the things that are in here while they are worthwhile until you know where you're going with a comprehensive plan. And until you get that in place, you are cherry picking things that may or may not work, that have no context. So you need to think about that. There is no context for a lot of this stuff. And that is something that is missing, and it is vital. A comprehensive, citywide land development and economic development plan. We have done nothing about economic developments, at least in the public, since the hurricane. And it's like tossing things at the wall and see what's going to stick. So you need to think seriously about that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of go along with what you just said, but I'm gonna back up to, I think it was slide number 2 or 3, don't go to it. But his comment was things to think about during the presentation. I think that's an excellent slide because I always like to go to number 3. And that's the Hurricane Michael killed Old Mexico Beach. What do we mean, Old Mexico Beach? What are each one of you, councilmen, what is your vision? What is your vision? We keep saying, what do we want? Do we want to be at Panama City? Do we want to be at Destin? You know, can we stop progress? These are all good things to think about. What is your vision, council? I'd like to know, individually, what do you perceive? Because what I'm looking at so far is a total expansion of Mexico Beach, and we're not going to be the old. And I would submit that us old folks that have been here for some time, we want to maintain that old beach, Mexico Beach atmosphere, as well as construction. But what I see is nothing along that lines at all. I see an expansion of Orange Beach. I don't see all this annexation, how it's going to lower our millage rates. Maybe it will short term, but long term it's not. So that is my concern. What are your visions? Because that's really going to drive your budget, in my mind, as long as what she said about the comprehensive plan. What do we want to do? Can we stop controlling? In some regards, no. But I think we can. I think we could probably look at it and say, let's just build. Only thing I see so far at all this expansion is helping realtors and renters. I don't see it helping the residents here at Mexico Beach. Okay? That's it. Thank you. Yeah.
There's something that I'd like to just toss out here at you. This was written this morning by a longtime resident. I don't appreciate the commentary on page 1 about the old Mexico Beach being dead. Feels tone deaf considering the losses we've all incurred and the sacrifices we've made to stay behind and piece things back together. Mexico Beach would be Panama City Beach already were it not for the original homeowners sticking to their guns, not selling off blocks and blocks of land, and purchasing and continuing the businesses that would have otherwise folded. The old Mexico Beach is not dead. It's had a facelift, and it names the things that have come back. That's not a dead city. That's a city with tons of resiliency and guts. That's an old city with a facelift. I think it would be advantageous to understand just how many original homeowners remain before calling our city dead. We are the city. We are still here with the same values and same interests and the same vision to limit expansion, to remain uncrowded and family friendly. So that brand of comment feels out of touch. So y'all as a council need to keep in mind what Alex was talking about. Yes, growth and expansion is inevitable, but you need to remember that those of us who came here for a particular reason and are still here do not want to see a whole lot of continued overdevelopment. We do not believe that Mexico Beach is dead. We believe that it should remain as much as possible the town we moved here for. And that is possible with the citizens working together and the council listening to the citizens, because we are the ones who are important here. It is about the residents and not developers and not tourists. It's time to put the residents first. So y'all need to remember that.
Mayor, can I say something here?
Sure.
Lisa, can you tell me a Florida statute where it gives a municipality to power to reject development outside of our municipal boundaries?
We do not have to annex anything.
So if they develop and bypass Mexico Beach, and then they have tie into somebody else's water and sewer, and then we're servicing them, they're coming to our beaches, they're coming to our using our roads, they're going and using our parks, and we're getting zero revenue from them because we didn't annex them in because, you know, people don't want to annex. Those costs, those added costs, are increasing taxes on the property owners who are here now.
You are not listening to what I'm saying. I am not against annexation, but I am against, as so many of us are, annexation in the way that it is being presented now. It needs to be rigidly controlled, and it needs to be at the agreement of the majority of the residents. We are not against annexation. We are not stupid. We understand that annexation and expansion will be. But you have to control it, and you have to do it in an orderly fashion, and you cannot just say, oh, Mexico Beach is dead, because it is not. And there can be expansion and a continuation of what we moved here for, which is uncrowded, not overdeveloped, and a more laid-back lifestyle. So you have to balance that. And I'm saying that we need to balance this and not just rush headlong into pulling everything in.
I think that, Steve, go ahead and make a comment. Go ahead.
Really, to go back to what I said initially, it kind of dovetails on all these other comments. And I'll use Mr. Smith, either right before or right after I moved here, he made the comment about Sweetwater, that it had been in the works for X number of years and probably may not happen in the next 20. So the comment I made to tie back into what Lisa said, to go back into the whole idea of having a comprehensive development plan for our city, specifically just the comment about Parker Park. The city and those of us that live here, and you all represent us sitting on this council, we cannot wait another 10 or 15 years to see if or when Sweetwater is going to do anything. If and when they do something, then they're going to have to pay to make right access through Parker Park if that's what the council agrees to let them do. At this point, 6 years post-Michael, those of us that live here 365 days a year, we do not want to wait another 6 years to see if Sweetwater is going to do something before we put an amphitheater at Parker Park. Just like we don't want to wait another 6 years to get golf cart access from the west end of town to the east end of town. You know, just simple things like that. You as a council, in my view, and Mayor, you've heard me say it, cutting taxes is great. Being fiscally responsible with our money is also very great. And we need to have resilience in all our budgets in this city. But putting the lives of us that live here on hold while we wait for developers to decide what they're gonna do. Be proactive on the annexation side with a vision that, what do we wanna do? And I don't know the municipal law, but I don't believe you can just arbitrarily go out and annex land in. The landowner kinda has to agree to that, right? So there's a lot that goes into this. Let's not be argumentative, let's work together, but, you know, those of you sitting in those elected spots are representing us. And I think the voice is, we want you to do what's right for everyone. People are gonna come here because we got a beautiful beach. But those of us that live here know that from Memorial Day to Labor Day, it's kind of crazy from time to time. But the other 9 months out of the year, it's heaven. Let's make it a little more heaven. Thank you.
Thank you. I hear everybody saying what they're saying, and I agree with a lot of it, I really do. I mean, Lisa, I agree with what you're saying about we need to enforce law, we need to be strict with these developers and everything else. And I believe at this table we do that to the extent that we have. I don't think there's a hidden agenda by any of us to allow a developer to step on our city. I don't believe that. I wouldn't be sitting there. I mean, I think that as a small city, we've done some things to identify. We've taken our charter and we said we're going to identify a 3-mile area. I like to call it a historical Mexico Beach, and we said we're going to protect it. We did that in our charter. We can't have this council can't vote and make a decision to raise the height. We did that. So I think we're making some steps, and that's small, I understand. That's small. But being what I ran on the campaign was a small town defender. And let me tell you how I interpret that. I interpret that as Mexico Beach, historical Mexico Beach at 3 miles, we can protect to a certain degree. When it comes to what I like to call the Wild West, anything west and anything north, it's like the Wild West, and we have to fight like we're against the Wild West. We have to make sure that it's beneficial long-term for our city. And some of them are going to be, and some of them are not. I couldn't agree with Steve more than that. Mr. Cox said more than we don't have to do all this stuff, okay? We need to take care of Mexico Beach. I think that's what you see in this. I hope that's what you see in this budget that's put together. That's what we're trying to do. $4 million that hasn't been spent. We're going to find a way to spend it. And it's not on developers. It's on our city, and it hasn't been done for years. Sorry. It hasn't been done. It hasn't been spent. We're going to do that. Anybody else in the audience?
Well, not real. That kind of bothers me. Hey, we're gonna spend that money. We're motivated, we're gonna spend that money. But what Lisa said, and Mr. Cox said, what I was trying to say. The budget, we need to get in place, but it also needs, and what I was saying about the long-term plan is they need to be hand in hand. How do we get there? That's the long-term plan. That's our vision. The budget is how we finance our vision. So far, the budget, I agree with you, Mr. Wolf, Mayor Wolf. It's an outline, and it kind of works with our old or historic Mexico Beach, the services we need, right now. And we're kind of starting to keep an eye to what's going to happen. Like the Tyndall sewer line. To me, it's just, you also have a separate one for the sewer fund. That's just like a subdivision. If you want bump it up, make that a subset, because it's an anticipated expense, and in addition, a possible anticipated expense, and you want to segregate that from your general funding, that's fine. That's good thinking, with, because it could happen. And if it never does, then we can do something with that money. But if it does come, and we're hearing that it might be, then we're in a better position to deal with it. Oh, what a surprise. Oh, you knew about it 10 years ago. Now we're finally doing it. And a lot of that's gonna, I think, happen. If it happens, gonna happen after, Tyndall gets to a certain point of their reconstruction. And, well, do we wanna do this now, or are we ever gonna do it, or whatever? We don't know. But they put us on notice it could happen. So that's part of the long-range budget. And that's a long-range budget item sitting there next to your short-term budget, which is our sewer fund. But what everyone says is true, and we need to work on this together, and it has to be, I hate the term, holistic, but if you don't have your first vision of where you want to take this, then the rest of this is, at least becomes ad hoc. What are we doing here? What are we doing there? And I think that's what a lot of us are reacting to, is this 31 pages just brought out, hit a lot of old triggers, that we've been dealing with and fighting with. So, but it shows how important it is to do it right.
And wait till we get into the next 35. So, if everything's at the, I'd like to go ahead and bring it to the table, if we make any notes that we'd like to go with.
I mean, I guess I'll start, I did highlight the kill at Old Mexico Beach, I did. I think it was the wrong term to use. Old Mexico Beach is not dead, and so it won't be dead. All right? And I highlighted that, and I think it was just the wording. I think everybody here wants it to be to a certain level, like y'all said. It's a new version, but we do still have, the bones of it. And I'm speaking not as a council member, as a citizen that plans on being here for a long time. So I just wanted to, touch on that. We'll get down. The other thing highlighting, and y'all brought it up, this was, are we filling the canal between the highway? That's just a question of something else to look at, who's paying. But it also gets into the Sweetwater. We should not sit around and wait on that. I know it's a big deal and they're planning on going through there, but if you want my personal opinion, it's just personal. What I think is best for the city is the road not go through there. We may not be able to, that may be the best route. Because there's a lot of other effects that it will have on other citizens too. So we're gonna have to be, what is the best route gonna be? It may turn out that's it. But we do not need to sit around and be dictated, by other events. We need to take them into consideration. But none of that's here yet. So that was just one thing I highlighted. And everything else, we're starting to plan, I would question the Tyndall line relocation. Do you think, we should start putting money aside, but do you think they would really come and say, you gotta get your line out of our base?
I don't know.
No.
And I've talked to Bob Micah, who's the county manager for Bay County, since he told that to myself and the mayor, and he didn't have any firm idea himself, and Bay County is the one that's running the AWT facility out there on Tyndall Air Force Base. So.
And it's good to put the reserves away. It's reserves. It's still our money.
Yeah.
That's just one thing I marked, but that's.
And if you're familiar with the military, Tyndall Air Force Base gets a new base commander every 2 years, so there's a lot of things that can change over the next 9 years. You're gonna go through, 4 or 5 new commanders, and like I said, opinions and things are gonna change.
I think what you'll see for the future for water and sewer, and I'm not speaking out of turn, I just know what I hear. And I think you're gonna see a consolidation of
the 7 cities come into Bay County and all contribute to a main facility or an additional facility, something along that line.
And I was just touching, I mean, obviously we'll get through this, a lot of the stuff in the budget. I just want to, something else.
Just real briefly, going back to the Sweetwater, those investors bought that property at a very inexpensive price, a large piece of property. And for them to, when they came and spoke to us, it seemed like they just were making assumptions, like they were gonna come through Parker Park, which we have not decided that to be their route to come through. I don't, I mean, it's like, okay, they said they had the approval to fill in the ditch, or not the ditch, but the canal, but then remember Jerry was very upset when they said that we were gonna pay for the dirt, and Jerry said that was not part of the original plan.
Exactly right.
So, why should we hold up what we wanna do with that park for them to come in and create a grand boulevard into their subdivision one day, take 80 feet to do that, and guess what? That's gonna go into the canal. So they're gonna create this grand boulevard, is the supposed projection, which we haven't given permission to do that. We don't have to do that. They bought a piece of land at a cheap price that was landlocked, and we knew that. It is not our responsibility to give up our park and say, okay, we're gonna fill in the canal, we got the permission to do that, but okay, we need 80 feet of that. That's a lot of that canal, and then y'all gonna get to pay for the dirt? Those are the kind of things I think we need to stand up for in this city. When developers come in and they try to bully us to take our land and deny us our park, we don't have many parks around here that are sizable to do anything with. And I think we really need to pay attention to things like that. That is not an assumption. It just seems like it's repeated over and over again in documentation. That's making an assumption. We have not given them permission to come in Parker Park and take it over. In the meantime, we're waiting for years for it to develop. We could go ahead and do our amphitheater, develop the park with the bathrooms and the playground, and do a lot more to that park. And not just make the sacrifice and assume we're gonna give it to them because they said so. And then get to pay for the dirt.
Okay, anybody else at the table?
That's what we are trying to do, to get amphitheater. That's, and one of the, what's small comment for me, we didn't kill Mexico Beach, and Hurricane Michael did. I had to be here. And the people I hear that wasn't here have no clue. A lot of people wasn't here. So if you was here, you understand about not killing Mexico Beach. I didn't like it, and he didn't mean nothing about it. If you wasn't here, you don't have to be here.
Oh, I'm here, and I've been here. And I'm not saying we killed it or the council killed it. Mexico Beach is just not dead. That's what I'm saying. Period. The whole Mexico Beach is still here. I was out here the day after. Anyway,
I was here.
Yeah, I was there.
All right.
Took me 2 hours to get it.
Mayor, can I say?
Good.
So, first thing I want to say, this isn't a criticism of this briefing or an agreement with it. First time I saw it was 2 days ago, yesterday. And so, I'll just tell you, this is Chris's presentation and asking of the council. And we haven't had a chance to speak to it yet. So please don't judge us by this brief, whether good or bad, if you agree with it, don't disagree with it. Since Sweetwater's been brought up, I personally have not been in favor of them going to Parker Park. And I hadn't really had this grass that we were waiting to move out on Parker Park because of that. And so that's good to know. Probably my fault for not paying attention enough to the discussions with Chris. The other thing is, Old Mexico Beach. I wasn't here during the hurricane, or I didn't live here before the hurricane. I had vacationed here quite a bit, but I understand. And what I believe is, I think, I'm not putting words in your mouth, Chris, but I think what he really meant is, and I've said this before, the landscape changed here literally after the hurricane. And so, and it created a different economic environment where property that wasn't either available or made economic sense to purchase because they had a house on it, an old house on it, things changed. Some people chose to leave and not rebuild and sell the property. Developers came in and took advantage of the situation. And for all those reasons, I think many things have changed, but I don't believe that means we can't control some of this. And the part of that is in the land development code. Currently, the land development code allows pretty much, if you want to build on the property within certain limits, you can. I think in the future, what we need to look at is, what do we want the city to be like, to look like? And I agree with Lisa about, we don't really have a long-range plan. I was disappointed in the results of the grant. I understand this isn't a criticism of Chris or of the planning committee that did it. They didn't have time to do what I expected when we got that grant. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do that. I think we have to sit down, and Alex, I'd be happy to sit down with you and tell you my vision. Because I kind of have a mixed feeling about this right now. I often wonder, does the city have an identity crisis? Some people say we're a small fishing village. Some say we're a retirement community. Some say we're a tourist destination. You know, the Community Development Center spends a lot of money to bring tourists here. And I think they're trying to bring the family-oriented tourists. But this needs a lot of community involvement. And I see the same people here all the time, and that's good. But I don't know, and I'd like to hear from the other residents here and what their vision is. And I got some of that knocking on doors, probably like you did, Larry. But I really would like to hear what the residents want. You know, email me, call me. Thank you.
Anybody else at the table? A couple of things I had, Chris, on your slide 6. First thing up there is the cut taxes for our homestead property owners. Not to include property owners?
Well, I mean, it cuts taxes for property owners, but they're not gonna see a decrease. Our homesteaded property owners will see an actual decrease in their taxes.
I'm not getting that.
If we lower the millage rate, then
Everybody gets a cut.
everybody gets a cut,
Okay.
but the non-homesteaded properties will still be paying more than what they're paying for this current fiscal year. The actual
Right, because the
homestead,
homesteader gets lower.
correct.
Okay. So the statement really is that we're cutting taxes for everybody, lowering the millage rate, not only homestead.
In effect, we're cutting taxes compared to if we didn't move the millage rate at all. Homesteaded properties will see an effective tax cut, which means, you know, if they're paying $100 this year, then they're gonna be paying $95 next year. Your non-homesteaded properties are gonna be paying $100 this year and $113 next year, you know, just rough numbers. So they're getting a cut, and that by us lowering the millage rate, it's not going as high as if we didn't lower the millage rate, but they're not getting an actual tax cut, they're gonna be paying more money.
Okay, so whether it's a 6 or a 5 reward, it'd still be a tax cut. for them.
Could I say something about that, Mayor? Sure. So, I've seen Chris's numbers, and I understand his logic. However, I'm not convinced that's the case, and I don't think it's been proven to me. The tax value went up like almost 30, Chris says 22, I say 29% from last year. So that's a huge increase in our taxable value. Just lowering the millage rate a 1/4%, even, you could lower a whole percent, I think, and the tax rates are going to be the same or more, depending on whether you get the 3% protection on the raise or the homestead. So, and I'm not convinced on the math because I haven't done it myself, I guess. When I looked at my own home, I think my taxes at 5.75 will go up. And so, and that's because our taxes go up, the value goes up and our value of our home goes up. So I'm not convinced that's the case yet.
And every property is gonna be different, you know, because different homes get different valuations. A home on the beach is gonna be assessed differently than your home in the suburbs. So every home is gonna be different. I gave the math equation showing, you know, if it fell under this situation, this is what you can expect to see as a tax cut. And I kept the math simple, so that people could understand it, so I could describe it.
I just read it as we're going individually after just the homesteader, and I don't believe that's what we're doing.
No, I'm pro tax cut,
Right.
but the people who are not homesteaded are still gonna be paying more in taxes next year.
Correct. Okay,
That I agree.
we have to look into that. I have some more questions on it, Car Ingram, on slide 11, Car Ingram rigs. I mean, obviously, they've done a good job to this point. Costly in comparison to hiring a financial person to the city. So our goal will be to get a financial person as quick as possible.
Can I say something?
Yes,
before? I do have concerns for the financial director position. I still think we are safer with an accounting firm that has credibility and a license to lose. If we go back again to a financial director, we're probably talking bookkeeper, which that you will hire, that will be under your direction. That makes you a little bit more vulnerable for responsibility for finances as well. But if we use an independent agency of accountants that have something that they can lose if things aren't done right, I just really don't even agree to hiring another financial director that's gonna be hired by you under your direction, that makes you accountable to them as well, when we can do I think it's worth the extra money to have an accounting firm, because that becomes an independent person.
Ultimately, the city administrator is responsible for the budget regardless, you know, so, I mean, and we've got if we're concerned about theft or fraud, we've got the safeguards set up and the segregation of duties, so to try to prevent that from happening. But, so the citizens are aware, Carr, Riggs and Ingram, we've paid almost $160,000 to in this first 6 months of this year. So if the citizens are willing to pay higher taxes and continue to pay, you know, for an independent accounting firm instead of hiring someone in-house, then by all means, that's one thing we can do.
But then we had a lot of problems that they got us out of. I mean, they were able to straighten up a lot of things. I think they were well worth the investment. The budget wasn't, the 22 budget was far behind. And I know that Debbie resigned because of the conflict between Springbrook and the city, but then Doug Baber let her stay on a couple of more months. So she actually was here long enough that that audit could have been completed by her like she had done in the past, but it just didn't happen. So I don't know that we can blame lack of staff, change of staff. The staff changes had to do with the city administrator, assistant the city administrator, things like that. That didn't have to do really with the person that was responsible for that audit. And then, of course, Mary Harmon has been here for many years. That's not a change in staff either. And she was also assisting in that matter. So I struggle with that financial director position. I really do. I think we're safer with an accounting firm. Worth the investment.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yes, is it either or? Like I know when I ran a service organization, 13 countries, 5,000 members, so we had money coming in all the time. So we had somebody on staff that was basically handling the day-to-day operations, and then to keep everything laid in appropriate categories. And then we had a CPA come in and audit the books, put it together every year. So that was our quality control. But the day-to-day operation, and we actually even had brought someone in as a consultant to just review to make sure that was necessary. I said, well, everything that happens, has a financial composite to it. So you need someone on site every day, to just keep it going, and then you bring your accountant. county, your CPA.
I've actually talked to Carter and England about that, because I like the idea of having that extra set of eyes there. Whether they come in on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, just to review everything, make sure there was no mistakes made. But I've discussed that with them, and I've mentioned it to a couple of the elected officials who have come in and talked about it. So, I mean, that is an option. And if you come to any of the previous meetings when Adrian Welly was on the council, he made the comment at that time that back whenever that was done before, during his time here as the city clerk, that was the period of time when the city of Mexico Beach didn't have any findings in their audit.
So did they come in quarterly or
I think,
semi-annually or what?
I think then it was monthly.
Well, there may not be enough transactions to require monthly, but say quarterly, whatever. But my point is, it doesn't have to be either or. Have a bookkeeper handling everything.
Somebody
with
checks
oversight.
that. Steve?
My comment, and I agree with Ms. Hamilton, that not necessarily that we have a firm to handle the day-to-day. I like the idea of a finance director on staff, but I do think having a credentialed person in that seat, not someone who's worked in bookkeeping for 10 or 15 years, but someone who has an accounting degree, who has some credibility with training along with, and I think the citizens, not just the ones in this room, but if you polled them across town, they would say, yeah, we'd love to have a firm do quarterly audits. So I think, go with what Larry said, it doesn't have to be either or. I think it can be both. Given how much we're paying for what we're getting now, we can probably hire a person and have quarterly help for less money.
Good. All right, I did have one more, Chris, on slide 15, which is current account, bank accounts and balances. About 2 years ago, when I came on council, I remember that we made a decision to take some reserve accounts, spend some money, put them in CDs, correct?
Yes.
And we made well over $150,000 in just taking out some CDs. And I think that was a great step. I don't think we went far enough though. And I think that we ought to look at our water and sewer. There's $2 million been sitting there for years. And I think we ought to take the next step and look at that. Even if it's a short term, if we start doing some short term ones in 5 months, we can make a decision to do something. And in 5 months, we can make that money plus spend it after the 5 months on a project that we have. But letting it sit there is worthless. So I think that's something we ought to look at. Another $2 million. Any input on that? I mean, these numbers that are just sitting here, it's nice to have reserves, it is, but if it's not doing anything for you. Yes, ma'am.
On that, this is my 21st year of sitting through budgets, so I do have some historical perspective on this. And in the past, very little was spent out of these things or moved to places where, like CDs, where it could be short-term, 6 months, 3 months, whatever. And there was a reluctance on the council's parts, and councils being plural because obviously they changed, but it makes more sense and was often brought up that money just sitting there should be making money. So yes, if there's enough money that can be taken out safely, then that's a good idea. There has been, as you noted in the past, just a reluctance to do that. So if we can make money safely, look at it, because there's a lot of money sitting there, just sitting.
Agreed. And one of the things, Lisa, is we, or everybody, is we do these on a yearly basis whenever, and I know from past experience, a good way to do it is cycle them. You know, you could actually take them and start right here, because we have 4 accounts, so we could have 6. So that means we could cycle them every 2 months.
As long as
Rather
there's,
than doing them all at 1 year, waiting a year.
and as long as there is enough fluidity so that if there is an emergency, we can cover it.
Agreed. Okay, that's all I had on that. Chris, you have 35 more slides to get through. And this is the reason why I said we need to do the PowerPoint. So take a breath, drink your water, and we're ready to go.
Ready? Billy? All right, now we're gonna discuss the enterprise funds fiscal year 24-25 budgets. First up, water department, projected revenues, $1,845,072. Same for the expenditure side. So when you look at the water department notes, personnel costs, we're proposing one new employee for the utility department that'll be split 50-50 between the water and the sewer department. Just like with the general fund employees, health insurance going up 5%, workers' comp 20%, and proposing a 2% cost of living increase and 0 to 3% incentive pay increase. Revenues, the city is going to have to increase our water bills by 3% because Bay County is increasing the rates on us by 3%. Billy? Water department highlights, capital item purchases, proposing to purchase one medium-sized truck, 50% of a towed air compressor, the other 50% will be paid by the sewer department, and 50% of a 30 horsepower tractor, with that other 50% to be paid by the sewer department. Projects, the joint warehouse construction with sewer department, purchase and installation of fixed base antenna and utility software, purchase installation of upgraded water meters, an atmospheric valve replacement on the 1 million gallon storage tank, and installation of an aerator in the 1 million gallons water storage tank. Some of those we've discussed and some of those we haven't. The atmospheric valve replacement, that's not worked properly since Hurricane Michael, and anytime that they've had it repaired, it would stay operable for a few days and then go back out. So right now, Mr. Glenn primarily has to come out here 7 days a week. On our busy days, like July the 4th, he has to come out here multiple times a day, manually turn on the valve so that it'll fill our 1 million gallon water storage tank with water and make sure that the water doesn't, run out for our citizens. Once we get this valve replaced with a new valve, then we won't have to worry about that anymore. It'll automatically fill itself as the water is being used. With the installation of the aerator, what that is right now, everyone here is aware as well as our citizens because we have to send out reports. Some of the byproducts that are generated in our 1 million gallon storage tank can be alleviated if we put in an aerator, which would basically shoot the water up into the air and strip out the byproducts and then make it cleaner for, to go out to our citizens. And that would just resolve that issue. The sanitation department, projected revenues, $737,470. Same on the expenditures. Sanitation department notes, personnel costs, health insurance up 5%, workers' comp 20%. Same projected raises as everyone else. Revenues, we're proposing to increase the rates by 5% just due to inflation and projected increases in the tipping fees for where we take our garbage to the landfill. Sanitation department highlights, we're just going to keep being the best. And we're not going to request any additional bodies, any capital items, no new truck this year. The old truck that I mentioned earlier, we're going to get one more year out of it, save up another year's worth of funds, and be able to buy a new truck with cash after the upcoming fiscal year. Sewer department, projected revenues, $2,751,814. Same on the projected expenditures. Personnel costs, just like with the water department, they're paying their 50% share of the new employee. Health insurance, workers' comp up 5% and 20% respectively. And proposed 2% cost of living increase, 0 to 3% incentive pay increase. Revenues, we're proposing to increase the sewer rates by 9% because Bay County is increasing the rates on us by 9%. Sewer department highlights, purchase of one truck, paying for their 50% of that towed air compressor, 50% of their portion of the 30 horsepower tractor, and then the crane truck. The sewer department will be purchasing that. That was originally placed in this year's budget to be purchased with impact fees. As I stated before, you can't use impact fees for that purchase. So we're going to purchase that this coming year. Projects, joint warehouse construction, with the water department, rehabilitation of the lift stations on 14th Street and then Newark. The rehabilitation on, if you look at the line item budgets, those are fairly expensive. Those projects were bid out and came in over $1 million. One of those projects, we think we can do at least some of the work in-house to cut that cost, but a lot of that expenditure is coming from current and previous year revenues. So you'll see that in your line item budget. The FEMA fund, that's simply the FEMA projects that are out there, and either the amounts that we expect those projects to be, or in the case of the Mexico Beach Pier, put $50,000 in there because there's a little bit of engineering work that is still going on that FEMA's going to cover. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot that's changed there. For 2 months, we've been told that FEMA's going to approve the jetty repair funding for us. It could be funded any day. We're still waiting on that confirmation that the funding has finally been approved. And that's it for the enterprise funds.
All right, this is 43, and is there any questions on sewer and water?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So we are looking at a total of 17% increase on our utility bills.
It's 9% and 3%. I can't tell you.
9, 5, and 3, that's 8 and 9, 17%. Why can we not take some of these rolled over millions of dollars and lower that for the citizens? 17% is a whopper, y'all. And while I understand that the pass-through costs from Bay County, we can't do anything about, that's a big hit.
If we take money from prior year surpluses and use it towards lowering the bills, then that would prevent us from doing some of those lift station rehab projects. And I believe I've seen on Lisa's Beachcomber that there's a concern about our sewer and utilities. So we're just addressing the problems. So if we lower the rates on the citizens, then we don't do the repair work that's needed.
But it's not 17%, it doesn't work that way. It's 3% of water, so whatever that is. It's 9% of sewer, but you can't add the two. Where did you get the 5%?
It's 3% on
Sanitation.
water, 5%
Okay.
on sanitation, and 9% on
But you can't
Sewer.
add the three together to come up with 17%. It just doesn't.
3 and 5's 8 and 9, 17.
But that's not how the bill's gonna
Yeah,
work.
it's not for your total
It's
bill.
not total.
Right.
Could be pretty close, because it's an aggregate bill, so.
Well, like, what is the water, like 40 or whatever a month, 3%, you know,
So you
it's
have-
not gonna be, your bill's not going up $20 a month.
Yeah, well, let's do this. I mean, this is a workshop. It's a suggestion from a citizen. Council, get with Chris, talk to him about it, see what your thoughts are, and let's take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have to do these upgrades. I mean, we gotta get this stuff back and working. And I know we got this stuff passing through, these percentages. But in the end, the way we're gonna be able to help the citizens, the way we have, is to lower the millage rate. Some of this stuff we can't control.
They charge us for
Yeah.
water, we don't charge them.
Yeah, it's just passing through.
Me for water. It's just,
But then we have these big, we gotta get these things fixed. I mean, I understand, and I don't,
It's not gonna change the visual effect that they're getting 3% or 12% on their next water bill if we lower the millage rate. I mean, they're not-
well, no, but I mean, we give them reprieve, we give them that way. That's what I'm saying.
That could be
That's-
the conversation.
That's a conversation. To me, I mean, these pass-throughs have to go through. We're getting billed, we're passing them. Right. And then we have these repairs that have to be, we have to budget, we've gotta get these lift stations fixed. We talked about the water meters, we've already purchased half of them, or a portion of them. And we've talked about moving to this budget to replace them, to move ahead, so, I mean, I don't see any, there ain't no fat.
get with Chris, sit down, and find out where our water bill, what the average person's actually paying, see what it is, what the effect is, and see if we could, sell it or not, okay? If it's something we wanna do. You have to make an adjustment, we'll do that. Let's see what the impact is. Anything else from outside? Okay, I had, pay increases, they're done yearly,
Yes, sir.
Along with reviews.
The incentive pay is done on the anniversary date of the employee's hire.
So all employees aren't hired on the same day.
Correct.
So are they done at one time in 30 days or, okay. Is there any way we could move to something like that? Is there appetite for something like that? I think we ought to have a yearly increase. I know that we have, sometimes we have salaried people that I hear that when I've been on council here, that they don't get increases for 2 years or 6 months, whatever the time is. I come from the once a year increases and reviews. At the same time, everything done in 30 days by the supervisors, and we're done. Is there a reason why we couldn't move to a form like that?
I mean, it's council, it's just the city's policy. And right now it's in the city's policy manual, but that's adopted by city council, so we could change it if that's the appetite that the city council has.
Any thoughts on that? I mean, I can see it streamlined and done.
Yeah, so we're given a 2% cost of living, so that's immediate to everybody.
Yes.
And then you're just saying the other 3% is done on evaluation. Birthday. Merit, yeah, birthday. There you go. Makes sense.
Okay.
Tim?
I guess we'll get to this when we do the line items, but I'm trying to see how water and sewer revenue equals expenditures. Because does that mean, I'm guessing there's money in water and sewer that goes into some kind of other account or something. Are you saying that what we spend on producing water equals what we get in revenue for it, and same with sewer?
Well, no, I mean, if you look at those line item budgets, you can see where, you know, just like with the general fund, where we have the reserve accounts, we're gonna have reserve accounts in the water and sewer where we set money aside.
All right, so I guess I'd rather see water plus whatever goes into reserves or whatever minus the expenditures. I don't think it's a realistic view of it. It makes it look like it costs us as much as we bring in for revenue. And I think we're making money on water and sewer, I guess is my point. Yeah, it's not
Oh, you're
costing
looking
the same.
at revenues, expenditures,
Yeah.
equal numbers.
I think we're making money off those.
There's no doubt we are, and the purpose of an enterprise fund is it operates like a business where you're allowed to make money.
Right.
If we have a major, water and sewer infrastructure is expensive.
I'm not arguing we shouldn't make money, Chris. It's just the way it's portrayed. It makes it look like.
How
we're
much
not
are we
making money.
making, you know?
Well, I think that's in the
Breakdown.
budget sheet.
So
I mean,
that's-
we'll see that down the
So,
road.
I don't wanna talk about that too much. And then, and I talked to Chris about this, for the sanitation department, for example, 1 day a week, the sanitation workers, salary and benefits is from another department, I think general maintenance, and it's 30%. I think those things need to reflect, like, that should really be 20%, 30 is a little high. I don't think we can fix it this budget, but I think it ought to reflect something like that, because when you do the math, it's 5 days, it's not 30%, it's 20. So what I'm really trying to get at in a long-winded way is, I would like to do a better job in showing if we're losing money in that department, actual costs, we're not supplementing it with something else, and we're not seeing it. I really want to see what the departments cost us and how much we make in some of these revenue numbers. That's my point.
Get that to Chris, you guys, if you have input on that, obviously give it to Chris, and let's get it sorted out.
I got, on the FEMA funds, like we did on the bathroom, can any possible way we could, at Toucans, can we do something like we did at the park? And cause we can't, FEMA won't, they want millions of dollars, can we do something like that? Put that in the budget to get them bathrooms on the Toucan, or 8th Street is what I call it, right beside Toucan.
We can, they're leaning towards funding us for that project. Right now, they're arguing over whether or not we can take one of those concrete restroom buildings and whether or not we can put it on the ground or if we're gonna have to set it on concrete piles. And so they're trying to figure out that, because initially when we suggested doing the concrete restrooms, they said that we could put it straight on the ground. And then the most recent time, whenever Dean and I were talking to them, they said, no, we have to put them on the concrete piles now. And so we're waiting for a final determination there.
But I would like to see what that, to get done, because that's the most used bathroom on the whole place. If we can get them, and if not, that would be nice if we can, but somehow or another, we got the ones at the end of Canal Street. It's the poor ones that we could pull in and out, and I was really against that, but they are really nice.
So,
The bathroom.
going on with Jerry's statement about that, so we're looking better at FEMA funding that? Because if they're not, like Jerry says, we could pull it out of Parks and Recs and just buy the bathrooms and put them
That
there.
would be,
You know, and just, I guess we need to give it just a little more time, because I'm ready for them too. And if FEMA's not gonna do it, but I guess if FEMA's gonna do it, if it's gotta be up off the ground, then they're paying for it, and I wanna be good stewards.
17 foot, I might add.
Yeah.
That's what it
Oh,
was.
that's that level, that sea level, yeah, above.
Okay.
So, I'm with you.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay. Obviously, one of the things, I want to go back to the pay thing. I'm gonna talk to the city administrator as an individual with my 20%. I'm gonna talk to about doing a yearly pay increase along with your reviews at the same time. I think it'd be best for the city, more control. So he will be talking to you individually. Installation costs on the pumps. I think the last time we did this, we bought the pumps and we didn't have installation costs in it.
Correct. We're still, FEMA, we're fighting with them over getting the funding for that. So that's where we're at there.
And the funding would include
The installation. We've already purchased the pumps. We're fighting with them over the installation cost because at some point before I got here, it went out for bid, it was deemed too expensive, and then it was separated. And so now we're trying to get the installation paid for separately.
All right. That's all I have on that, Chris, if you want to go ahead and start on the 44.
But are we gonna power through and go into the strategic long-term planning? Because that was the end of the,
Let me take 2 seconds here. Anybody need to use the restroom or take a break real quick?
Let's go.
Good.
Let's go.
Everybody good? We're moving on.
I ain't gonna drink no more water. Right?
I ain't either.
I'm drinking a lot already. I'll open the next one.
Thank you.
one more slide, please, Julie. All right, so strategic long-term planning, like I said at the start of the presentation today, I just wanted to implement this to try to give a guide moving forward and some of the things that I'm going to be working on outside of what you may see at our normal every 2-week city council meeting. And you can see why, it's like that old saying, the best time to do anything was yesterday. And we didn't do it yesterday, so that's why I'm bringing it up today. Planning involves money, normally, like I said, these type of strategic long-term planning things aren't discussed at a budget workshop, but planning involves money and money involves the budget. There's 4 parcels of property that are in the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget for long-term planning purposes. And most property owners are interested in our city budget, so I expect this workshop to be seen by a lot of people. So again, transparency is big with me, and I want as many people to see this presentation as possible, especially when it comes to what we're going to be doing with taxpayer money. One of the proposals is going to involve investing reserve funds differently than what the city has done in the past. And not only is it different than what the city's done in the past, from what I can tell, it's different than anything any city in the state of Florida has done in the past. The city administrator has already initiated conversations with partner parties about water and sewer capacity. And then, like I was saying, the strategic long-term planning items will require council involvement or action at some point in the future. So now's a good time to inform them as well as inform the citizens of what some of the things I'll be working on. Julie? There's two primary overarching areas that the city of Mexico Beach faces when it comes to strategic long-term planning. One is future growth. We've already touched on quite a bit of that here today. And then potential threats. As far as the future growth is concerned, you can see, and I've included an aerial in here showing the St. Joe property, but there's 1,240 acres directly to the north, still owned by St. Joe. St. Joe didn't sell that to the Mormons for a reason. At some point they plan on developing it, so now's a good time for the city of Mexico Beach to start planning on that. The land off Highway 386 between Mexico Beach and Weehawken, there's a lot of plans going on up there. Land between Mexico Beach and Port St. Joe, the Harmon property, and then Sugar Sand and Farmdale north of Highway 98. As we've known from them coming to our workshops and meetings, they do own additional land over there, which they plan on developing in the future. I just spoke to a developer yesterday, and there's a development that we could probably expect to see submit their application for both annexation and future land use change within the next 2 to 3 months. So the development is coming.
And, excuse me, and that land is where?
I'm not going to say right now where it's at, but it's in one of those 5 that's not been annexed into the city yet.
One of the St. Joe company properties?
No, like I said, we'll discuss it more right now. It's just been, talked about, so I'm not going to go into any great detail. But just know that they're talking about submitting an application within the next 2 to 3 months. They first contacted me back in February. I hadn't heard from them since, and then over the last couple of weeks, they contacted me wanting to set up a Teams meeting yesterday so we could discuss their plans and the time frame that they're looking at. So I would expect to see that in 2 to 3 months. Potential threats, natural disasters. I don't have to explain that to anybody here. Man-made disasters. All you got to do is watch the news and see the global instability, terrorist attack, wars breaking out. When I was here from 06 until 14, one of the major terrorist threats or targets of terrorist threats here in Bay County that would affect us is Deer Point Lake. At that time, there was concern that, it was post 9/11, there was concern that terrorists or people unfriendly to our country might try to poison or put radiation or something in Deer Point Lake to where it would affect Tyndall Air Force Base and all the surrounding communities. Now, I haven't sat through a security briefing since I've been back this time around, but I can only imagine that the security threats have gotten worse. And then economic disasters. Our country faces, increased spending, national debt, inflation, and destruction, devaluation of the U.S. dollar. I'm kind of a political nerd and an economy nerd, and so I think that's probably one of the more realistic threats that we're going to be seeing in the near future. Julie, go ahead, please. Wanted to touch on the sources of municipal revenue. Ad valorem taxes, state revenue sharing, utility taxes, impact fees, service fees, rent, miscellaneous revenues, grants, and state appropriations. The first 5 are size and growth related, and I'm bringing that up because if we want to try to, okay, go ahead, before I go into this. There's the St. Joe property that I was discussing earlier. They're 1,240 acres. That's the parcels that they own. Like I said, they didn't sell that to the Mormons located to the north of that for a reason. And my guess is they're going to develop it at some point like they develop everything else. All right. This is what I was starting to mention, is the important growth-revenue relationship. As we grow, we can expect, the tax burdens on the citizens to go down. Mayor Wolf and I were discussing this back before the election, that if you look at, say, Callaway, they're much bigger, more facilities, more employees, but their millage rate is, I think, 3.35 or something, to where ours is 5.9999. So obviously, the more you grow, the more you have that ability to bring in additional properties, additional developments, additional population, and so it's going to affect all of our revenues except for that last one as far as grants and state appropriations. Julie? as there is since Hurricane Michael, people discovered the forgotten coast and more growth is coming. I don't have to say anything more. I just mentioned, developers and me having a meeting yesterday. So it's gonna come. We just need to decide if we're gonna control it or let it control us. Strategic long-term planning goals and projects. This is things that I'm gonna be working on and probably already started working on with some of our surrounding communities. Working with Gulf County and Port St. Joe to connect to one of their sewer system to service the land to our north, and working with Gulf County and Port St. Joe to connect their water system to Mexico Beach as an alternate water source. And mentioning those two right there, I'll go ahead and say that the best option for Mexico Beach when it comes to sewer would be to purchase whatever capacity in the future that we could get from Gulf County. If we do that, then we're buying capacity in 1990s dollars. If, because that's when the AWT facility and all the debt was assumed there. If we can't purchase any more capacity there, we're better off tying into Gulf County because construction and engineering is going to take the same amount of money theoretically, and it would be better to have a secondary source where we could dispose of our wastewater and create a redundant system in case something happened to the sewer line between us and Tyndall Air Force Base. Same way with the water, but different, is that obviously we've got the infrastructure set up now to get water from Bay County. However, because of that terrorist threat that I mentioned earlier, if we could tie into Gulf County or Port St. Joe's water system at some point for a secondary source of water, then that's going to add the protection to where if something did happen to, Deer Point Lake or Bay County's water treatment facility, or the line that runs between us and Bay County's water treatment facility, then our citizens won't have to worry about being without water. We'll have a secondary source of water there available to us. And then that last item there is working with FEMA regarding our municipal complex. Once that complex gets finalized and funded by FEMA, one of the things that I want to start working on is doing engineering studies and getting the plans put together for a larger water treatment, or not water treatment, but a water storage tank. If you were at our meeting 2 days ago, then you heard me say that our water tank that we have right now holds 1 million gallons of water. On July the 4th, we used 700,000 gallons here in Mexico Beach. So obviously the water's not going to last long if we're very busy and the water gets turned off for some reason. Furthermore, acquiring additional land for future growth and economic development. South 37th Street, everybody's heard me talk about that. It's a great opportunity for the city as far as economic development and potentially developing additional parking. 14th Street, that's something that's not been discussed before, but there's a parcel of property on 14th Street that's currently for sale. If you're not aware, then whenever you're driving around Mexico Beach, the beachside property that is just across the road from where 14th Street runs into Highway 98 is owned by the city. So that gives the city an opportunity to construct additional parking on 14th Street, improve that beach access point there, and try to alleviate some of the parking and vehicle congestion on the 37th Street end of town and the dedicated beach side of town. Updating land development code, we will talk about that more, and then creating a city investment plan and also a reserve policy which would incorporate precious metals as an investment option. All right, in regards to water and sewer, Mexico Beach needs an alternate water source. I've already discussed that, and then we'll need additional capacity in the future. So we would probably be okay with the water from Bay County just because we have that much capacity still available to us there. But again, it's always good to have another source of water just in case something happens to the one source that we do have. Land acquisition, North 32nd Street. I can't remember if I've talked about this. I know I've talked to people individually about it. I think I've mentioned it at council meetings. We're currently trying to make contact with the owner of the property there to where we can construct a through street for 32nd Street, make it, right now it just ends in a cul-de-sac. We want to make it go through to the Sweetwater development. That would alleviate the potential traffic congestion of people going from Sweetwater through the commercial area, the shopping center, and make it safer for all parties involved. 14th Street again will add the additional parking and additional beach access point to alleviate traffic. If you see in the description right there, I talk about it will provide additional parking and additional parking options to future city leaders. Those additional parking options is right now, we could go in there and build parking places. In the future, as Mexico Beach grows, as the surrounding area grows, acquiring that land and any other land on 14th Street would provide future city leaders to build parking garages or the like, you know, if it was so deemed necessary at that time. So, like I said, people are gonna wanna come to the beach, people are gonna wanna move to Florida, and growth is always gonna be coming our direction. So it's good to give our future leaders that option, again, to alleviate traffic from other parts of town. So, and there's the property on 14th Street, sits immediately behind the club. It's 0.39 acres. Then there you can see a little swath of land between the highlighted property and the concrete on the far left of the screen. The far left of the screen is the property that's owned by the city right now, where City Hall once stood and where the damaged fire department building currently stands. That will all be coming down at some point in the future, so we obviously have a lot of room there to build parking in the future. And if we're going to acquire that grass strip in the middle at some point, then we would own a majority of that side of the road on 14th Street and be able to build some substantial parking. South 37th Street, it provides a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the city to acquire prime real estate next to a city-owned asset and develop it as a mixed-use development, complementing the style of Mexico Beach, featuring retail, food, other commercial establishments. In addition to the residential units, South 37th Street would give the city the opportunity to create a unique space with a mixture of businesses and activities which could be enjoyed by both residents and visitors. It would be a central focal point for the city, in addition to being a revenue source. When I say a revenue source, you know, we would build spec buildings there and lease that out to the businesses who are wanting to be in there, and it would be a source of revenue, again, hopefully to offset any need or as much of a need for raising taxes in the future. My added recommendation there, that's received some scrutiny on social media. My number one fan, JD. I just want everybody to know I'm not requesting that. I want everybody to know I'm not requesting the city to build a house for myself. The goal here of building the two residential units, one for the city administrator and one for the finance director, and if the city so decides to build a third one for dignitaries or consultants when they're here in town. The intent of that is, right now Mexico Beach is very expensive to live here, and I don't foresee that changing in the future. It's always going to be very expensive to live here next to the ocean. Right now, it's going to be difficult to hire someone to come in at what we pay, so and expect them to live here in town. The city council requires that the city administrator live inside the city limits or get their permission to live outside. The last thing that we want to do is we're trying to hire a city administrator or a finance director in the future is say, come work here for us, but we're going to require you to live in town, but then we're not going to pay you enough to live here, so your first task is to figure out how you're going to afford this job, because that's where we're at right now. In doing this, it would be considered a part of any future city administrator and finance director, it would be considered part of their benefits package. So just to keep the numbers, you know, easy to understand on this, let's say 5 years from now, I'm leaving, the city is going to hire a new city administrator. Base pay at that time is $150,000 for a city administrator. If you say, but we've got this residential unit here, you won't have to worry about buying a house, you won't have to worry about paying rent or anything. But in exchange for that, we're going to pay you $120,000 to let you live in this condo that's owned by the city. The city saves $30,000 a year. Now, if it took $300,000 to build that condo, in 10 years' time, the money that the city saves by letting the city administrator and finance director, if they go that route, the condos would pay for themselves. Every year after 10 years, that would be money savings for the city, money savings for the city taxpayers. Otherwise, the city's got to raise taxes to pay what the cost of living for the full salary and benefits of the city administrator and finance director. Again, this is not for me. I won't be here whenever this comes about. So I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea that I'm trying to get the taxpayers to build a house on South 37th Street. This is strictly trying to save the residents tax money for the long term. Worst case scenario, some city council 20 years from now decide they don't like the idea, they can sell them and the money goes into the general fund. It's not like, you know, it's going to go anywhere. That's the reasoning behind this. All right, as far as the other long-term planning goal is updating the land development regulations. My vision of this is to provide an in-depth comprehensive update to the land development code in order to modernize it and bring it up to comparable standards with similar communities who have experienced growing pains due to the population and development transitions. Other places that have experienced what we're experiencing right now. They've gone through growth spurts and they've dealt with development, and it would be easy for us to go ahead and do that. Now, I've already got a quote from Alara for $125,000 to do this, and that has already been placed in the budget. The added recommendation I have, and I've brought this up before, is I think that the council or whoever, including the citizens providing their input, is that we should consider loosening the restrictions on the property to the north of us as an incentive to have those people annex in. Because just like I was talking about earlier with the water and the sewer, Port St. Joe has water and sewer at Highway 98 and 386. Those areas to the north could easily run a line if we don't try to work with them instead of being hostile towards growth and development. If we don't work with them and try to become a partner and encourage them to work in, to annex in and give them reasons to annex in, then they're going to bypass us. At which point we're out of the code. We're paying the bills for their residents to come down and use our facilities, and we're getting no revenue out of it. So I think it's a worthy discussion, even if the council don't want to do it, if the citizens don't want to do it. We just have to understand the consequences of our actions. And so it'd be a worthy discussion to maybe loosen the standards, give them a little higher, height on the buildings they can build, give them a little higher density, but then include stricter development standards so that it, incorporates the vision of our town that we want. Maybe require additional green space, require a certain look, a certain style, regardless of whatever it may be, what we decide on. But just do something where we can encourage them to annex in, build what we want them to build, but then also give them the opportunity to not lose money in that process. We want to encourage them to come in, let them make the money that they can make in exchange to build to our standards. That's my personal opinion on why I put this in there, what I think we need to look at and discuss. Julie? Last thing, an investment plan to include precious metals. I sent this out to elected officials a week and a half or so ago, and like I said, I hope some of our citizens have taken the time to look at this. Basically what this Florida statute does is it says municipalities can invest in government-backed items, CDs, bonds. You can have money in checking account, money market account. It has to be AAA rated, have FDIC insurance, etc. It can't be, any real threat of losing that money through risky investments, unless the city does a investment plan, a written investment plan, which is adopted by ordinance by the city council. Next page, Julie. Whenever you do that, if you do write an investment plan, then you can invest in different things, and one of those things, there's several things between A and G, but then you have item H, which is any other investment authorized by law or ordinance of a county or municipality. And that's where the precious metal idea comes in. Julie? Creating a city investment plan, and this is the reasons why. Or how I got in this situation, is you take what we have right now, and this is undedicated funds that are sitting in our bank account, what we would refer to as savings. Take a third, invest it in cash and cash equivalents, which would be short-term CDs, money market accounts. 1/3 would go into investment in longer-term CDs and government-backed investments for a higher interest rate, higher earning on that money. And then the other third would be placed into precious metals, gold and silver. And why I'm saying this, Julie, is precious metals create a store of value. Never in the history of civilization has gold been worth zero. You can't say that for other things. I brought as a prop today a $50 trillion bill from Zimbabwe. There's actually a $100 trillion bill that was printed in Zimbabwe because of the inflation and the devaluation of their dollars in the early part of this century. I'm not saying that that's going to happen here, but I just know that there's the potential. So investing in precious metals would prevent that from happening. It would also protect the city from national events outside our control. Again, the federal debt, inflation, devaluation of the dollar, removal of U.S. dollar as its reserve currency, as the planet's reserve currency. Like I said earlier, gold has never been worth anything. That was the value a couple of days ago when I made this slide, $2,300, almost $2,400. Billy, go ahead. This is the inflation I was talking about. If you watch the mainstream media, then you see that, you know, they talk about inflation dropping to 9, or I'm sorry, dropping from 8.5 down to 3%. We've seen a drop in inflation, but that's not the straight line effects of it. The straight line effects show a steady increase up, and then whenever it went up to 8.5%, the sharper steep increase, and then it's mellowed back out some. That's the actual effects. That's why you're going to the stores and you're spending more money, even though they tell you inflation is going down. It's year over year. Whenever they report on inflation, it's year over year, and it doesn't take into account what it already went up the previous year. Our federal debt, that's on the left. Right now, we're at $34.85 trillion. I just couldn't find a chart like that to include in the slideshow, but that's where we're at. Realistically, by the end of our budget on September the 30th, we'll be either over or very close to crossing over $35 trillion in debt for our country. On the right-hand side is the projected interest payments that we're going to pay on our long-term debt. If you're familiar with the federal government and how we finance ourselves using debt, as things in the past have been, the interest rate's been down close to zero. As those things are coming and maturing now, we're renewing that debt and we're renewing it at a higher interest rate. So that's why you see what they would call a hockey stick effect there on the far right-hand side. If you want to have a real nightmare, go compare some of those slides to Zimbabwe that I mentioned earlier and what they were experiencing. You're going to see a lot of similarities. A dollar's worth, two different charts, just one showing, you know, what the dollar has decreased over the last 100 years to get down to be worth $1, or what $100 100 years ago is worth now, you know, $3.06. Both of those charts end in the year 2020. And then BRICS. BRICS and the removal of us as a reserve country of the planet. If you're not familiar with BRICS, I would recommend you studying up on that. They're currently trying to form a economic alliance where they're going to have a commodity-based reserve currency, and they're recruiting active members. Their next meeting is in October. You can see China, how they've gotten rid of U.S. treasuries and started investing in gold themselves. Like I said, BRICS is planning on investing in or having a commodities-based reserve currency. Julie? I kind of spoke up earlier when I said both the charts regarding the value of the dollar in 2020. I did these charts myself. These charts show what has occurred with the dollar and gold over the last 4.5 years since 2020. Gold has increased 52% since January of 2020. The US dollar has decreased by 18% in that same time frame. You're talking about a 70-point spread and gains and losses there. If you're looking at our nation, no one's talking about cutting spending. Nobody's talking about anything else except moving forward as we have been. I don't, you know, it's my opinion as a hillbilly, I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. Those numbers come from government sources. Anyone here can go onto the government websites and calculate the inflation. Now what I'll tell you is if you go onto this website here and you use the CPI inflation calculator, you're going to get a different number than the $81.18 or whatever it was that I had on there. The reason why is because I calculated from year to year, and so there's some overlap. If you calculate there, it's 17.83% that the US dollar has lost in value during the same time that I calculated it at the 18%. And like I said, the reason why is I was going from January to January on an annual basis to do the calculations, where the government CPI there is a straight line chart. Either way, you're looking at roughly the same amount of money that the US dollar has lost over the last 4.5 years. Now, in saying all that about the precious metals, like I said, I've looked around on the internet. I can't find any other city that has proposed to do that. And I haven't seen, you know, that's in Florida or elsewhere. I may sound like a lunatic for it, but looking at the trends, looking at the safety, looking at the money we have in the bank, I don't think it hurts us personally. Obviously, it's a city council decision, but it don't hurt us to at least begin discussing that and trying to negate some of the negative effects that our country is seeing right now. And with that, there's the definition of normalcy bias. I think everybody probably knows what that is, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or concerns.
Strategy planning, outside the box, right?
Yes, sir.
I guess. So with that said, let's go ahead and go to the public. Any comments or
Could we
input?
take, my next suggestion, that we take a break now, and I think this is gonna be a lengthy discussion.
If you think so, I'm okay with that. Yeah, let's take 5.
Thank you.
Reminder, the video is still running.
So this is the time you wish you were one.
I'll do my computer.
You feeling better? You feeling better? Yeah. I'm sorry. That's okay.
I'm almost halfway, one's in there, but.
Awesome. Where do you want to do it? Is Katie coming?
I'll show you
Well, they're on break right now. It's up to you, they're on break right now. Alrighty.
And like I said,
It's quiet in I'll start calling it an age call.
It's an age
I think it was. Yeah.
but it's based on different dollars. It's not like a 17, like I did 17% on the minimum bills, and the minimum bills, like some odd dollars. 17% on that is, so, but it would be on.
I saw them doing it, it ain't the same.
I know, mine. Long.
Yeah.
And like I said, don't hold me to that figure.
That one,
Gives you a better idea of what they're talking about. It's not for me. Yeah, no problem. Because you got me thinking about it too. I was like, oh. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
So I thought, oh, well, here, I'll put my phone
no, it's still there.
Got blue or something.
You don't have the pressure like that out there? 53.
Now, are you?
That's what I am too, but then
Well, I was saying, there's no pressure.
Yeah.
Of course, when I stand next to the sun, I realize that I've lost some.
Oh, yeah. That last 30 seconds of just kind of dribbling and shaking and dribbling and shaking.
Michelle says you're wrong. He's not the economist. He's a hillbilly. Economist, he's a hillbilly.
I'm glad you clarified. Of course, I'm against 37th Street anyway.
Oh, I know you are.
I'm certain. Hey, there's something there. I see, yes, I don't know anything wrong. This is not gonna be good.
Long term, it's gonna help the city recruit better candidates.
Well, I don't even want to buy it either. The parking? How much is a lot?
I heard
Change back to 425, get out roads.
she grabbed some people's lunch. I came and told them this morning, this could go long, so I told them, take your lunch at 6 o'clock. You guys have in for lunch, go to the conference room, you guys can be over there.
You're gonna be stuck in somewhere.
Some of them do, yeah. Because they leave
I'm surprised she didn't show up. She said no, she's coming. She's calling.
They leave,
Start participating.
I told her there, our meeting's not as exciting about her.
Mr. Glenn, you know, if we
Yes,
get
somebody heard
there.
about the that's where it needs to be clean.
They'll be out there chewing their fingernails.
Well, I catch you some crap here.
My phone's in my truck. Really, my phone's in my truck.
Tell her I left my, one thing I got my phone, the other phone's
What do you want to be?
I didn't say this, you guys, I just said, use the word kid.
You're talking to me.
Yeah, I know, that's what I got you.
We need to bring that back. Really.
I tried this to better off, but she said, I didn't hear
I've got two paint baskets around and then and they've got different stuff in them, and then I've got some, like the mini onions that are just like the white ones. And, I've got those sitting on the bench. Every single day, if I not water
I haven't seen it yet. That's
I just read about the talk, I had to come and
How do you even read that?
They call me doctor for a reason.
Yeah, and I go out there, you know, if I forget, I go out there, like if I can wash my knife, I
At least I can write in cursive. How many people did?
That's pretty true. I can write that. I'm sure I can read it.
I guess I shouldn't have gave you a card, though, I just pulled it out.
So, Rich, I just have a few comments. Those are my notes. Maybe.
I kind of approached it a couple of times. Do you make that decision? Two guys in the line supposed to. Political advocacy.
But if you look at it, they can't really spend their money on it. So even though we did have a tax rate back then, it's still, even though we didn't have a very high tax rate back then, it's still a problem.
A whole subdivision and build those
The way I would foresee it happening without knowing anything, is we have to have some sort of voter referendum here. And then based on that voter referendum, petition the state to redo the lines, and then Bay County would sue to stop it. Yeah.
All right, if we're ready to go,
But no, to the, we don't. I don't care if we're talking 50 years.
I'm sorry. This me. I know you, I ain't want to mad.
all right, guys, let's go.
Fall in.
Thank you, guys. We're gonna get and wrap this up. We're at the comment and question point, and I want to start with the audience. There's a lot there, and thrown up against the wall, let's try to unstick it, I guess. Anybody?
All right,
Lucy, get a start? Absolutely.
I'll just start. Once again, there were some good points, and some things to consider, but once again, it all circles back to, we have to put the comprehensive plan in place first. So, I'm just gonna keep harping on that.
What do we look like in the future? Right?
Yes, but we don't know. Who do we want to be? And what do we want to look like? And that is the comprehensive land and economic development plan. And if you don't have that in place, then it's useless to try these other things. So,
You got a comment on
Well, for the record, I mean, the city has a comprehensive plan which tells how the city's supposed to grow in the future.
that? And probably has to be updated.
Yes, every 5 years.
Steve?
Well, that was not what I was going to talk about first, but since you brought up the comprehensive plan and it's supposed to be updated, when was the last time it was updated?
I don't know.
17?
17,
Okay, so we're behind the curve on that. So as part of the LDC revision, we need a comprehensive plan revision too. But those go hand in hand, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so well, a lot of things in here I like. One of the things I like a lot is the concept of the city getting into the real estate business a little bit. I think that's a great vision, buying some land, planning to put maybe initially a parking lot, maybe in the future a parking deck. We know it's coming, especially 20, 30 years from now. We don't know what's going to be on the west or the north side of us. I like that. 37th Street. I think if there's one shortcoming that's going back 50 years here is there was never a plan for a centralized business district. That little business center where the hardware and Mango's is, whatever. But to do something on 37th, mixed use, the city be involved in that, I know I'd support the council going down that road. One thing I'm not too keen on is if you want to get in the condo business, I'll let you elected people see how the rest of the city feels about that. I would prefer personally to pay our elected officials market value rather than get in the business of, we got condos for you and your family that you can stay in at zero cost. I'd rather the city, if they're going to build condos, put them on, rent. There's probably some sort of statute in the Florida statutes that would prevent local governments from doing that. I don't know. But, fair market wage, if someone chooses then to live here or not, they can decide to do whatever they want to do. But I'll say there was a lot of creative ideas in that section of the presentation. And I'm wholeheartedly behind the 14th and 37th Street and all that. That's great concepts.
Anything else in the audience? Come to the table, to make some quick comments. The whole 37th Street needs to be looked at as far as I'm concerned, as a whole. I'm for it because we need to identify, we need our Reed Street in Mexico Beach, whatever that is, okay? So if we identify that area as our Reed Street, how do we approach it? I start to get a little shaky when it's us furnishing a house to somebody, whether it be an administrator or anybody else. I get a little leery, and I'm not sure we want to get into that type of situation. But it's not my decision, just my thoughts. So we're gonna have to get together the council, input from the citizens to see what the right approach and what's the right way to go. I do agree with the commercial on the bottom, dwelling at the top, but how we take care of that dwelling, or if we want to even do anything with that dwelling, I question a little bit. Other comments I think I can hold on to. Metals, I mean, precious metals, I'm not away from that. I mean, I'm okay with that. I don't know if a third is really gonna make an effect. I don't know if we wanna maybe do a little bit more than that. Gold is an economic type of situation. As the economy moves, gold moves. Silver is a little bit different than that. Silver is industrial, what's going on industrially. So I think we could look at that and see if that's where we want to put our money, we want to make some money on it. I do like the timelines of the CDs and the control of CDs and the security of CDs. So that's my input. Anybody else jump in?
Going back to 37th Street and building possibly 3 residents, I think that's a wild and crazy idea. I think we'd do better with, you and I jokingly said, to do a Ferris wheel, at least we could make money off of the Ferris wheel. I see that as a costly adventure, and I would rather change it to the city administrator can live 20 or 30 miles out of the city than to provide lodging. I mean, we have no idea what that cost would be. Do we have to furnish it? Do we have to provide furniture for that, pay the utilities? Have house cleaning people come in? That could just go on and on. I don't see that as a good idea. I mean, I'm waiting for the LOL at the end of that one. I just couldn't believe we even suggested that one. And then my other concern is when you're mentioning about maybe water and sewer from Port St. Joe. Have you talked to anybody on that? Because when I went to a community meeting, their annual community meeting, they're already putting a moratorium on windmill. They said you build X number of houses, you can build X number more, and you're done, because of their concern about water and sewer. So why would they give us water and sewer?
Well, I get different reports than the moratorium issue. There's no moratorium being discussed at Windmark Beach.
That was in their community meeting about a month ago. I went to the annual community meeting, and that was publicly stated.
Well, I don't know, like I said, I hear different things, but not just Port St. Joe, but Gulf County's getting into the water and sewer business. And
once again, Gulf County's growing a lot. Gulf County is also growing.
And that's why it's important for us to start now if we want to tie into their system, that we begin laying that groundwork now.
I think if you think of everything's up for sale no matter what, wherever you're going. I mean, so we can go to Bay County and buy it, or we can go to Gulf County and buy it. If we're paying for it and the capacity is there, somebody should deal with this.
Whichever one's the cheapest. That's what I thought.
But Chris, if you're talking about like another new subdivision coming in, that's not even in our figures of what we're counting on it. I mean, that's something else that's coming in. I mean, you're being pretty discreet about it. We don't know how many houses. We don't know what that annexation project would be. I mean, we just can't have that burst into our lives and think we're going to have enough water and sewer. That's just not feasible.
Well, like we mentioned 2 days ago, we've got plenty of capacity on water and sewer.
That's, but there are different opinions on that. Not everybody agrees with that.
Mr. Glenn has 50 years' experience in the water and sewer business.
Yeah.
So whoever disagrees,
Mhm.
and not only does Mr. Glenn have 50 years' experience, but Mr. Glenn is probably one of the most honest and most outstanding individuals that I know. And so if anybody has more than 50 years' experience, to where they think they're smarter than Mr. Glenn when it comes to water and sewer, or they think that Mr. Glenn is lying, then please come see me at City Hall. Please.
I don't really think that's the point. I mean, I certainly trust Mr. Glenn and his knowledge and his 50 years of experience.
Mhm.
But then when we have other people that live in the city that are engineers that did that type of work for their whole career, and they're sending up alarms to us, I think that's something else we need to think about and respect their opinion as well.
And I think, Ms. Hamilton, I think you're right. What has to happen now, we've delivered our message from the city. We've collected our data. Now those so-called expertise that are out there, that are citizens, they need to come to the city, sit down with Chris, sit down with Glenn, go over the same numbers. Going back and forth here is not the way to do it, long-term to get an answer. So I hope that the numbers are out there. This is what the city sees. Let those experts come to us and let's sort it out. We want to get it right. We don't want to get it wrong. So they're invited. Come. Anybody else?
All right, first off, I don't believe, I think we've been over this before, we can restrict employees' living location. We can require a response time to work. We cannot dictate where they live. So I don't think that's the issue. It is an issue, the cost of living here for nothing to live here. I'm not in favor of providing housing. I would give them a cost of living also. I don't feel comfortable with the gold investment. I don't know enough about it. It sounds risky to me. Certainly willing to listen to it, but I just don't think it's where we want to go initially. I'm a very conservative investor. As I told Chris this morning, I didn't get rich on the stock market bubble, but I also didn't get poor like some people did. And so I don't believe in risking our money, the city's money. This annexation discussion kind of goes back to what we were talking about, capacity versus demand. I think you have to look at every annexation in detail and not, I know what Chris is talking about, the concept of taking control of the growth outside the current city limits. If we want to be like we want it to be and not be, 50-story high rises and some other things. But there comes a point you have to do the analysis of, you get to a certain point, your capacity has reached demand, and the cost to go beyond that then becomes exponential versus just a couple more dollars. And I say that we might cover what we have today with one fire department, but there comes a point where we'll need additional firefighters or put another fire station someplace. And what is the cost of that compared to the tax benefit of having other folks in? And when you look at some of these other cities we were just talking about, like Parker and Callaway, I know they have a much lower millage rate, but they also have more business than we have. We're a primary residential community. And I don't think their quality of life is anything near ours when you look at what they put their money into and the types of, the value of their houses and some others. So I think it's a little different. You can't just compare it with apples and oranges kind of thing. That's it, thank you.
Sure.
Yep.
Take your time.
I got one thing, I don't know if it might pass me or not.
Yes, sir.
But this is, I've been here 5 years, and this is the best that I've been, so, I didn't throw it at you, I'll keep it back there. This is the best, Chris. You put a lot of time on who helped you. This is well implemented to the best I've seen. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have a lot of questions. I know, I might, Rich, get with you, let's answer these happen. And I hope we put together this, put behind us this, what Ms. Hamilton was discussing about these professional people, I wish we could get together. I think we beat that dead horse in the ground. Let's get Mr. Glenn and you and with the people that know, and let's put these figures together and let's come up with something. I would like that to happen, but I hear it all the time. The people, know, and I'm like you, it's so offended me when they go against Mr. Glenn, especially the type of person he is. I'll get off that, but it's been well presented. There's some things I want to go with this to you, and I will do it.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm close to being here.
Let me just before, we have one question.
Not really a question, but since this keeps bubbling up, where our capacity is and this and that, can't we just have somebody from Bay County, their water and sewer, can just come and tell us what it is and what they're doing?
We tried to put that together in our last meeting. Maybe you ought to look at some of the stuff we produced. I think it's good information.
Just
Yeah.
go to the horse's mouth instead of, okay, this is what our capacity is for Bay County, this is what our plan is, this is where Mexico.
We've done that as a city administrator myself, done that with them, and we got all their input, and that's when we got with.
Not just meant as not as a capacity as a mayor or city at an actual city council meeting, so they can make a presentation that everybody can see it, everybody can hear it, it gets recorded, it gets televised, it's there.
I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Anderson,
Okay.
but Bay County sends us a report every single month on what we use that month, and it gives us our capacity. Over the last 12 months, we've only averaged 37% of our sewer capacity.
I'm not disputing any of it, right? Just saying, but it just seems to be going round and round, let's just get it on the table.
I'm just not sure,
Horses stand.
I'm not sure if Bay County's gonna wanna come over here and spend their time and effort getting involved in our local politics to tell us what they already send us every month. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
But I think more importantly, Mr. Anderson, is Bay County knows the county and the different cities' overall
Right.
numbers, but they're not looking at our usage and, you know, our developments. They're not looking at that.
I'm not trying to get anything started here, I was just trying to say, is this a way that we can just put this at rest?
I'm just saying,
That's all.
all I'm saying is, I don't think that's probably in their job jar, they're not gonna understand that. It's at the city level. Chris did last council meeting, brief this in quite a bit of detail, and there's some numbers behind it. I would love to sit down with some people who are experts at this and have them look at it, and if we're wrong, we don't wanna get this wrong. This is too important, so.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Just to follow up to that, you know, this is not the first meeting we've heard about the 1,240 acres and Farmdale and all these other proposed future developments. And I know I've spoken to some of you on the council about developing a better relationship, and I'll use St. Joe as an example. As someone who lives here and knows a little bit about how they do things and how they develop things in the past and how they started developments and then sold developments, I think the council would be well served if we had a liaison with St. Joe that would come at least quarterly, and let's start to ask the questions. What future plans? Because they don't do anything without a plan. They've got a plan for that 1,240 acres. And that would be a start, so we could get an idea, you know, of what their ideas are, so that then instead of not having a plan, we could develop a plan to deal with that.
Great suggestion, it's been implemented. We had our first meeting already, and we
Super.
will schedule a second one.
But that's not a public meeting, it's just kept with you.
That's
The
correct.
public's out.
I'm talking about having them come to a council meeting so
We
that,
can do the public thing too, but we also need to know what's going on the day, like what kind of conversations are going on.
Right,
It's
right.
amazing what you can find out sitting at a table, across from a table, rather than getting a presentation.
right.
And the city administrator and the mayor need to do that.
And when are you gonna tell the public about this?
Well, we did, in fact. We came back and we talked to you about the parking lot that they agreed to. We talked to you about the under the bridge walkway that they talked about maybe doing. We did it the next meeting after that.
And it was discussed at that time, that we'd start having quarterly meetings between St. Gil representatives, myself and the mayor.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, we need to do that with DOT, we need to do it with a lot of other entities.
And just since we're kind of just having an open conversation here, what's the status of the DOT turn lane project?
It's supposed to take place this fall, whenever they come in and repave all of 98 from Tyndall Air Force Base to the Gulf County line.
All right, anything more at the table?
Well, I'm gonna bring up, this come to the table a couple times, the land acquisition. Not against it. I think 14th Street, I think if we look at land for community interest, public, citizens, we can use, that's one thing. 37th Street, I just can't get on board with that until we have some sort of plan. I mean, we've talked about it, I've heard different ideas, but the cost of it, I mean, we haven't looked into any of the costs. I'm just not talking about buying the land, I'm talking about developing it and doing things like that. And then also throwing in 37th Street, we don't have the pier back. So all the parking that's there is, I would say, is pretty much pier parking. There should be. I mean, that's how it's always been. Also we have the other side of the road on 37th Street where some citizens are building back. I mean, you take all that into consideration, but the biggest thing is, and this is just from my background, is we could be really going down, the path, and once we're there, I don't want us to get stuck. I would like to see some more, I guess I want to call it planning. I mean, just as far, because it's just, building is expensive. That's what, I guess that's the one thing I'm getting at. Owning the land, that's probably the cheapest part of it. But developing it and putting that in, so. I've said to Chris, I've had these, he knows, I've talked to him in person about it. It's just not, I'm just 1/5, 20%. And I'm not saying I'm against it. We need to, before we go out and start buying all this. And I put the numbers together, I don't have it here, we're gonna talk about this more. I mean, just the actual purchasing of it is pretty sizable. Now, if you should tell me we got grants and we got things that we can do, then,
And that's the thing, since you brought it up, so the citizens are aware, is I've talked to Elizabeth Moore, our city engineer, and we've approached Triumph, and, Triumph Gulf Coast, where they give grants. One of the things that we have to work on, and this is one of the things that we plan on doing, and this is the reason why I wanted to bring it up in this year's budget and purchase additional land, because it's going to put the prerogative on the city council on what we do. If the council's not wanting to move forward, then we should, like I said at one of the previous council meetings, we should sell the land we already have down there instead of just sitting on it. We got to make a mind up one way or the other. But if we want to try to get grants down there, Triumph will give us the money, but they're going to require a match. If we go ahead and buy the land now, they will use whatever we spend on purchasing this property as our match when it comes time to get that grant. The one thing that we have to figure out is what kind of businesses are going to go down there, and then what kind of job numbers those businesses will create. And that's where Elizabeth comes in, because the money that Triumph gives us will be based on the number of jobs created. So it's a whole process, and just because we haven't talked about it here publicly, don't mean that we're not working on it and doing the planning. I've got Gulf Coast State College, their architectural class coming in this fall as one of their class projects to design South 37th Street if we wanted to do a project such as this. And instead of us going out and hiring an architectural firm to do that, the class is going to do it and give us, their idea, their vision of what that could look like, at no cost. It would be the class project. And so, these are things that are moving forward. But again, the council has to make that decision. This is something that we see as a worthwhile venture to do now to leave to future generations. And if it's not, then we just need to get off the pot and sell what we got down there and let 37th Street develop whenever we have the
Well,
opportunity.
you say that, I mean, but, you know, and I'm not like backing into it, you know, just from our LDR, I mean, we have an LDC, I call it LDR. You know, the parking, the stormwater, you know, I mean, you take one of the parcels, 17 foot, we don't need to get too far. You start doing the setbacks, and let's say you're wound up with a 1,200 square foot on the bottom, and I don't know the top, we've got to still figure that parking. But, you know, we're 1 per every 300, so that's 4 spaces. You know, you start multiplying that down the line. I just want to plan, you know, once again, we talk about plans, and it sounds like you've contacted some people. And input from the citizens that live there. I mean, you know, I mean, that's the other part, is we can start buying land. I'm worried about that. We buy a parcel here, and then we buy another parcel, we got one in the middle, and somebody's holding us hostage. I mean, we've got to,
Where eminent domain comes in.
well,
It's not-
if we wanted if we wanted it commercial, we should have zoned it commercial.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I think that this can go, you know, it's, if you read this, it's like, oh my gosh, let's build these apartments, do all this stuff. We may wanna back up from that, we may wanna take and buy a couple properties that, when they're combined together, the value is a lot higher, obviously. Is there a possibility we should be looking at buying that property, make sure they're combined, taking them, rezoning them, as commercial, and then go after developers to build on?
That's council decision.
And you brought up the stuff we have, that was grant money. I mean, I'd have to know into that. I mean, you said just, I mean, you sounded like, well, let's just sell it.
Well, it's
But, I mean, what are we gonna do, give the money back to the?
I researched it because I wasn't aware of where that money came from. I was told it was state appropriation. There's no restrictions on whether we sell it or not.
Okay.
I wonder what we get for the whole lot. And just really, just a small, then the lot, people know on 37th Street, that's the pier. And that is the pier. And it's not only used, it's the beach. If you go down there, it's full, and we have no pier. So they go into the beach, and for parking, or for whatever you want to do, but them lots, is majority of them, is not but 17 foot wide. That's all. So you have, some developer will have to come in, and I'm not saying they won't, but if we can purchase the property, I believe we can have control of what, and that is our most, it will be our most focal point when we do get the pier. It's 37th Street. That would be,
Like I said, not against it, just a little.
I understand what you're saying, but have you ever lost any money on land?
Well, yeah.
Well, you bought the wrong damn land.
And some of it was right here in the city. I can promise you that. I went to a closing with quite a big check to get rid of it.
All right, and Lisa Mogan had a question.
Are there any notes or meeting minutes or anything from the 2019 council's efforts to buy up the properties on 37th Street? This happened right after the hurricane. They talked to all of the property owners at that time. All of the property owners were in agreement about changing that from the townhouses to commercial with residential on top.
What was
That
that,
effort-
2019 council meeting?
2019, right after the hurricane, because the council at that time, as we were trying to get into the repair stage, determined that the pier was the main focus, and that should have been a commercial district, and they were thinking about that, with residential above commercial. The people were all in agreement with that, then it got lost in the shuffle.
Okay.
My question is there anything from that effort? It might be helpful to you.
Good.
I haven't looked at any of the minutes, but I will tell the council and the public that's here now that whenever I sent out those letters a few months ago to all the property owners on 37th Street, it was, expressing our interest to either buy the property or partner with the property owners down there to do a mixed-use development. And the owners of 6 lots down there are willing to partner with the city if we go in there and build the commercial, to build condos up on the upper floor for them in exchange for their property. And obviously, we'd have to work out the details of that, but there are 6 lots down there, the owners of 6 lots who are willing to partner with the city on that. And that's where my idea came from, that if we're gonna be building, residences on top of commercial, that the city can take that opportunity to do some for us to help recruit, candidates for the important positions in the future, as well as save money in the long term. But, that's where, anyway, 6 lots.
Sounds like a good.
All right, I think council, you need to get with the city administrator, sit down and give them your input. I'm gonna give my input, and, we'll talk about that on the 30th when we get together, go over line items. If we're gonna reserve some money for purchase or not. Anything else from anybody before we adjourn?
I will say, Chris, thanks for letting us put it together. I mean,
Very well spent.
we're all talking about planning and trying to get a future, and this is, you gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, I watch many nights, I live on, I live close to the city hall, so we have to make a left on there to get to Highway 98 like everybody else, but, many a nights, 8 o'clock at night, I saw Chris's car working and doing what he needed to do to get this done. It's well put together, well thought out. I've told you this already, and I appreciate it, appreciate your efforts. I also appreciate the citizens that showed up today and your input, I really do. We need it, we need it. It doesn't mean we make an instant decision, but man, that input can be evaluated and we can take it into account. So I hope the 30th that we get some more people with some more input. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Take these home?